Hello, I am Robert L. Patterson, minister for the North Little Rock Church of Christ, located at 1708 Highway 161, North Little Rock, Arkansas. If this is your first time viewing our videos, please click subscribe. We also want to invite you, your family, and your friends to come and worship with us at any and all of our services. Sunday morning at 9:45, Sunday evening at 5 p.m., and Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Our subject for today is church autonomy. Church autonomy is something that we don't talk about a lot, but it needs to be taught so people can understand what it means. Autonomy means independent, self-governing, and supreme. To understand the individuality of the churches of Christ, we must understand that each congregation of the churches of Christ is autonomous, independent of itself. It is absolutely not governed by a group of so-called biblical theologians or a group of church ministers or brethren. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44, the Bible said, "And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." God made a promise that he was going to build a kingdom, and the kingdom that God was going to build was not going to be left to other people. To help us to understand the autonomy of the churches of Christ, we need to understand that God commanded Moses to separate the people of Israel into singular congregations and to place men over them. Now let us keep in mind that Moses was not over a congregation. Moses was over a nation. A lot of preachers believe that Moses was talking about a congregation like we call church buildings today, and that's not the case at all. Moses was leading a whole nation of people, and God gave Moses instructions how to take those people and break them down into certain congregations. In Exodus chapters 18, verse 21, the Bible said, "Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands and rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s and rulers of 10. Now see what God just did. God told Moses to separate these people up into congregations. And these congregations was of thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10. So it broke down to the smallest amount. But God did not tell Moses to put two or more men over one congregation. And that's what we need to really understand about God, is right at dividing it. Because a lot of people think, well, we got a congregation with 200 people, and we need two preachers or elders, whatever they call them, in order to rule that congregation. And that is not what God told Moses to do. To further understand the autonomy of the churches of Christ, we need to understand what John told the 7 churches of Christ in Asia. In Revelation chapter 1, verses 10 and 11, John wrote, "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and heard behind me a great voice of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And what thou seest, write in a book, and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia, unto Ephesus, and unto Smyrna, and unto Pergamos, and unto Thyatira, and unto Sardis, and unto Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea." Now, God made it precise where to send these letters to these churches, that to send this Bible to. And when you read what God is saying, you'll see that God told the angels of each church of Christ in Asia the thing that he wanted them to correct within their own congregation, on their own church. God did not tell those angels to collaborate or to work together to help them to resolve their problems or to help them to grow each other congregation. God didn't do that. That's the thing that man picked up. Man decided how to work together at different congregations, but they never did teach us how to work together with every congregation in the world. They had their own little particular groups. And we're going to teach a thing and say the Bible said it's got to be conducive to everybody. There are many gospel preachers who are violating the doctrine that God gave Moses and the churches of Christ in Asia by having multiple gospel preachers and so-called church leaders in singular or individual congregations of the churches of Christ. These sinful doctrines are the doctrines of men. we need to really understand a lot about the Lord, because the devil teaches us a lot of things that we have really overlooked. And God is teaching us every day when you read the Bible, things that he wants us to do. In Matthew 15:7-9, the Lord explained about the doctrines of men. He even referred back to Isaiah. In Matthew 15:7, the Bible says, "You hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh to me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." When you go to a congregation of the churches of Christ, and you see that they got multiple so-called church leaders, that is a thing that man came up with and not God. Because God told Moses, find capable men. We ought to have decent men in the churches of Christ today that can at least one man take care of 1,000 people. I know that's right, because that's what the Bible teach. But we got congregations that got less than 500 and got sometimes 4 or 5 different preachers in that one congregation. A thing that God did not command, a thing that came by man himself. We need to really go back and understand what God's trying to teach us. And as I close this lesson out, I want you to understand that each congregation of the churches of Christ is autonomous, independent of itself, and it is absolutely not governed by the doctrines or the commandments of men. When you let the church of Christ and you read it, you'll see what God is teaching us to do in the church. So there's many preachers that we need to talk with today. Why don't you, as a Christian, ask your minister, why do we teach all these things that's contrary to what we can read in the scriptures? Let them tell you the truth about God's word. They do that stuff because they are following their own man-made doctrine. So please pay attention to the church autonomous. And if you have any questions, feel free to call us. Thank you for viewing our videos. And will you please help us to spread the gospel of Christ by telling your family and your friends to view our videos and subscribe? Thank you.